In a glittering New York ballroom, one man's cruel jab at a nation sparked a fire that only Cristiano Ronaldo's quiet strength could ignite. The grand ballroom of New York's premier convention center buzzed with the weight of power and prestige, its chandeliers casting golden light across a sea of tailored suits and glittering gowns. The air smelled of expensive cologne and ambition, a cocktail of wealth and influence that defined the International Summit on Economy, Culture, and Innovation. Global leaders, tech moguls, and cultural icons filled the rows, their whispers a low hum beneath the clink of champagne flutes. Cameras swiveled, capturing every handshake, every calculated smile. The stage loomed large, a platform for the world's elite to flex their vision. Into this high-stakes arena stepped Cristiano Ronaldo, the soccer legend, his presence quiet but undeniable. Dressed in a navy tracksuit, a black cap pulled low, and sneakers scuffed from wear, he looked more like a tourist than a global icon. His chiseled features were softened by a faint smile, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses. He slipped into the third row, unnoticed by most, his backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder. No entourage, no fanfare, just a man who carried greatness in his bones, blending into the crowd like a shadow with a purpose. Before we jump in, drop a 1 in the comments if you're ready for an epic story, hit like if you're skeptical, and stick till the end for a mind-blowing twist. The room's energy shifted when Donald Trump, the former US president, strode to the stage, his signature swagger drawing cheers and curious stares. His red tie gleamed under the spotlights, his hair a defiant crown. Known for his unfiltered bravado, Trump gripped the podium, his voice booming with confidence. The crowd leaned in, expecting bold ideas or biting commentary. But what came next was a gut punch, sharp and deliberate. "Brazilians," Trump said, his lips curling into a smirk. "They're great at soccer, sure, and they throw a hell of a party. But let's be real, when it comes to leadership, tech, or serious business, they've got nothing to offer." The words landed like a grenade, the room falling into a stunned silence. Laughter rippled from some corners, nervous and forced, while others shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting to the Brazilian delegation. Carla, a young diplomat in a crisp blazer, froze in her seat, her hands clenching her notepad, her face flushed with anger and shame. Diego, a tech innovator beside her, gripped his phone, his knuckles white, his dreams of pitching his startup now tainted by those words. The Brazilian contingent, small but proud, felt the sting of being reduced to a stereotype in front of the world's elite. Ronaldo, seated a few rows back, didn't flinch. His face was a mask of calm, his sunglasses reflecting the stage lights. He crossed his arms, leaning back, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp, like a predator sizing up a challenge. The room buzzed with whispers, the weight of Trump's words hanging heavy. Emma, a journalist in the fifth row, her press badge glinting, sensed the story unfolding. Her fingers flew across her phone, live tweeting. "Trump just took a swing at Brazil. Big mistake?" Her followers surged, retweets climbing as the moment rippled beyond the ballroom. Carla whispered to Diego, her voice tight. "How dare he? We're more than that." Diego nodded, his jaw set, but his eyes betrayed hurt, a flicker of doubt about his place in this room of giants. The Brazilian delegation exchanged glances, their pride bruised, their voices silenced by the sheer audacity of the insult. Some lowered their heads, others stared at the stage, as if willing the moment to vanish. But it didn't. It lingered, raw and ugly, a public humiliation on a global stage. Trump, oblivious to the undercurrent, continued his speech, tossing out stats and boasts about American innovation. His voice filled the room, but it was Ronaldo who held the real power, unnoticed by most. Beneath his cap, his mind was racing. He didn't stand, didn't shout, didn't storm the stage. Instead, he pulled out his phone, typing a quick message to his team backstage. "Change the plan," he wrote. "No slides. Tell stories. Real ones." His fingers moved with purpose, his face unreadable but his resolve like steel. He wasn't here to play soccer or charm the crowd with his fame. He was here as an ambassador for a youth empowerment initiative, a project that had transformed lives in Brazil's poorest corners. Trump's words weren't just an attack on a nation. They were an attack on the kids Ronaldo had spent years uplifting, the communities he'd poured his heart into. His smile, faint but steady, was no longer just charm. It was a promise, a spark of something bigger brewing beneath his calm exterior. The crowd stirred as Trump wrapped up, his final words drowned by polite applause. He stepped off the stage, shaking hands with a select few, his grin wide, as if he'd just won a debate no one else was having. The Brazilian delegation sat in stunned silence, Carla scribbling furiously in her notepad, her pen digging into the paper. Diego stared at his phone, his startup pitch now feeling small, irrelevant. Emma kept tweeting, her words sharp. Brazil just got slammed, waiting for someone to clap back. Her followers chimed in, some mocking Trump's bluntness, others amplifying the insult. The room's energy was fractured. Some attendees moved on, sipping drinks, while others whispered about the audacity of it all. A new figure, Dr. Silva, an elderly Brazilian professor seated near Carla, leaned toward her. His silver hair gleamed under the lights, his eyes sharp with wisdom. "Patience," he murmured, his voice low but firm. "This isn't over." Carla nodded, her anger softening into hope, sensing something was coming, though she didn't know what. Ronaldo, still in his seat, watched the room with quiet intensity. His team backstage was already scrambling, pulling together new material for his upcoming panel. He'd been slated to talk numbers, stats about his foundation's impact, charts of scholarships awarded. But Trump's words had changed the game. Ronaldo didn't want data. He wanted heart. He wanted the world to see the Brazil he knew, the one that fought, dreamed, and rose against all odds. His fingers tapped his knee, a rhythm only he could hear as he envisioned the stories he'd share. Kids from favelas coding apps, teens building schools, mothers thanking his programs for saving their sons. These weren't just stories, they were weapons, each one a counterpunch to Trump's dismissal. The room didn't know it yet, but Ronaldo was about to redefine the narrative, not with anger, but with truth. The summit moved forward, the next speaker droning about global markets, but the air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. Emma's tweets kept climbing, her phone buzzing with notifications. "Something's brewing," she typed, her eyes flicking to Ronaldo, who sat still, his cap low, his presence a quiet thunder. Carla, still shaken, whispered to Diego, "We need to do something, we can't let this stand." Diego nodded, his mind racing, but he felt powerless in the face of such a public slight. Dr. Silva, overhearing, placed a hand on Carla's arm. "Wait," he said, his voice steady. "Someone will answer. Not with noise, but with light." His eyes drifted to Ronaldo, a knowing smile tugging at his lips. The Brazilian delegation, small but resilient, felt a flicker of hope, sensing the tide might turn. As the panel neared, the room's attention shifted. The MC announced Ronaldo's session, and a murmur rippled through the crowd. Most expected a light talk about soccer, maybe a few anecdotes about his glory days. But Ronaldo stood, his tracksuit a stark contrast to the suits around him, and walked to the stage with a calm that silenced the room. His sunglasses were off now, his eyes sharp, his smile gone. He didn't look like a celebrity, he looked like a man with something to say. Emma's fingers hovered over her phone, ready to capture every word. Carla sat up straighter, her notepad forgotten. Diego leaned forward, his heart pounding. Dr. Silva folded his hands, his face serene but expectant. The lights dimmed, the stage glowing, and Ronaldo stood at the podium, his presence filling the space. The room held its breath, sensing something extraordinary was about to unfold. 2. The grand ballroom of the New York Convention Center pulsed with anticipation, its chandeliers casting a soft glow over rows of global elites, their tailored suits and glittering accessories a stark contrast to the raw energy brewing on stage. The air was thick with the aftershock of Donald Trump's biting remark about Brazilians being mere soccer players and partygoers, a jab that still stung the Brazilian delegation seated in the third row. Carla, the young diplomat, clutched her notepad, her knuckles white, her eyes burning with a mix of anger and hope. Beside her, Diego, the tech innovator, stared at his phone, his startup dreams momentarily overshadowed by the weight of national humiliation. In the fifth row, Emma, the journalist, typed furiously, her live tweets amplifying the moment to thousands online. "Ronaldo's up next. Will he clap back at Trump?" Her words sparked a flurry of retweets, the digital world buzzing with curiosity. Dr. Silva, the elderly professor, sat calmly, his silver hair catching the light, his hands folded over a worn leather notebook, his face serene but expectant, as if he knew the tide was about to turn. The stage was set, The lights dimmed, and Cristiano Ronaldo stood at the podium, his navy tracksuit a quiet rebellion against the room's polished formality. His cap was off now, his chiseled features sharp under the spotlight, his eyes steady, carrying a fire that didn't need words to burn. The crowd hushed, expecting a speech about soccer glory or light anecdotes from a celebrity athlete. But Ronaldo didn't smile. He didn't charm. He stood still, his presence commanding, his silence louder than the applause that had greeted him. The giant screen behind him flickered to life, displaying a single phrase in bold white letters against a black background. "The Brazil you don't see." The words hung there, simple but heavy, like a challenge to the room. Then the videos began. The first showed a teenage girl, Sofia, standing in a sunlit alley of a Rio favela, her sneakers scuffed, her eyes bright with determination. "My name's Sofia," she said, her voice clear, unpolished. "I grew up where dreams get buried. My brother was lost to the streets. But Ronaldo's foundation gave me a laptop, a teacher, and a chance. Now I code apps for kids like me." The screen showed her typing furiously, her code turning into a colorful app for teaching math. The crowd murmured, some leaning forward, others wiping their eyes. Carla's pen stopped moving, her breath catching. Diego's phone slipped to his lap, his face a mix of pride and awe. Emma tweeted, "This is unreal. Ronaldo's showing Brazil's heart." The next video featured Lucas, a young man from Salvador, standing in a workshop cluttered with 3D printers. His hands moved deftly, assembling a prosthetic arm. "I was a nobody," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "No money, no school, just a kid from the favela. Ronaldo's program taught me tech, gave me tools. Now I make prosthetics for people who can't afford them." The screen flashed to a child running with a new prosthetic leg, laughing as Lucas watched, his smile wide. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a ripple of emotion spreading. Carla whispered to Diego, "This is us. This is Brazil." Diego nodded, his eyes wet, his earlier doubts melting. Dr. Silva, watching silently, scribbled in his notebook, "Truth speaks louder than power." Emma's fingers flew, her tweet reading, "Ronaldo's not just a footballer. He's rewriting Brazil's story." The room felt alive, the air charged with something bigger than politics or business. The third video was different, raw. It showed Maria, a mother from Recife, her face lined with years of worry, standing outside a small community center. "My son was gone," she said, her voice breaking. "Drugs, gangs, he was slipping away. Ronaldo's soccer program brought him back. He's in college now, studying to be a teacher. I thank God for this man every day." The screen cut to her son, João, coaching kids on a dusty field, his smile a mirror of Ronaldo's. The crowd was silent now, the weight of Maria's words sinking in. Some wiped tears, others clutched their programs, the glossy pages crumpling in their hands. Carla's notepad fell to the floor, forgotten, as she pressed a hand to her chest. Diego, his voice barely a whisper, said, "He's showing the world who we are." Emma's phone buzzed with notifications, her followers soaring as she tweeted, "This room is in tears. Ronaldo's hitting harder than any politician could." Ronaldo still hadn't spoken. He stood at the podium, his hands clasped, his eyes fixed on the screen, as if he too was moved by the stories he'd chosen. The videos ended, the screen fading to black, and the room held its breath. He stepped forward, his tracksuit a stark contrast to the suits around him, and picked up the microphone. His voice was low, steady, with a faint Portuguese accent that carried the weight of his roots. "These people," he said, pausing, letting the words settle. "They are Brazil." The room erupted, applause crashing like a wave. Carla stood, clapping fiercely, her face alight with pride. Diego joined her, his hands shaking. Dr. Silva remained seated, his eyes glistening, a quiet nod signaling his approval. Emma's fingers trembled as she tweeted, "Ronaldo just dropped a mic without saying a word. Brazil's on fire." Trump, seated in the front row, shifted in his chair, his face unreadable, his usual smirk gone. The applause stretched on, a standing ovation that shook the room, not just for Ronaldo, but for the nation he'd lifted up. He waited, letting the crowd settle, his presence steady, unhurried. "I grew up with nothing," he said, his voice soft but piercing. "No money, No fancy schools, just a ball and a dream. People told me I'd never make it, that kids like me were nothing. But I had something stronger. Hope. That's what I give back through my foundation. That's what Brazil gives the world. He paused, his eyes sweeping the room, landing briefly on Trump, who looked away, his hands fidgeting. Someone said today we're only good for soccer and parties. But what you just saw, that's leadership. That's innovation. That's Brazil. The crowd roared again, the sound visceral, a mix of pride and defiance. Carla's hands stung from clapping, her heart pounding. Diego whispered, "He's changing everything." Emma's tweets were trending now, hashtags like Brazil Rising and /Ronaldo speaks flooding social media. Dr. Silva wrote another line, "Humility is the loudest weapon." Then Ronaldo did something unexpected. He stepped back, his voice softening. "I'm not here to talk about me," he said. "I want you to hear from someone else." He gestured to a screen, and a live feed flickered on, showing Sofia, the girl from the first video, sitting in a small tech lab in Rio. Her face lit up, nervous but proud. "Hi, everyone," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm Sofia. I built an app to help kids read because I know what it's like to have no books. Ronaldo's program gave me a chance to dream bigger." The crowd gasped, then cheered, the raw authenticity of her words hitting like a thunderbolt. Carla wiped her eyes, whispering, "She's incredible." Diego, inspired, pulled out his phone, typing ideas for his own startup, fueled by Sofia's courage. Emma tweeted, "Ronaldo just brought a favela kid to a global stage. This is history." Trump's face tightened, his hands still, as if the room's energy was pressing against him. Backstage, Ronaldo's team watched in awe, their hurried changes to the presentation now a triumph. The crowd was on its feet, the applause deafening, a wave of emotion that transcended borders. Dr. Silva leaned toward Carla, his voice low. "This is what leadership looks like. Not tearing down, but building up." Carla nodded, her anger replaced by a fierce pride. Diego, still typing, murmured, "We need to keep this going." Emma's phone was overheating, her followers doubling as the moment went viral. Trump, still in the front row, clapped slowly, his face a mask, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of discomfort. Ronaldo stepped off the stage, his tracksuit a quiet defiance, his face calm but resolute. The crowd parted for him, some reaching out, others whispering his name. Emma followed, her camera ready, sensing the story wasn't over. Backstage, the air was electric. Carla and Diego rushed to Ronaldo, their faces alight. "You did it," Carla said, her voice thick with emotion. "You showed them who we are." Ronaldo smiled, his eyes tired but warm. "I just showed the truth," he said. Diego shook his head, grinning. "No, you changed the game." Dr. Silva approached, his notebook tucked under his arm. "You've given us a spark," he said, his voice steady. "Now we carry it." Ronaldo nodded, his hand resting on Sofia's image, still frozen on the screen. The moment felt bigger than the summit, bigger than the room. Emma, hovering nearby, typed her final tweet of the session. Ronaldo didn't just respond to Trump, he rewrote the world's view of Brazil. Stay tuned. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows. Trump, flanked by aides, his red tie stark against the dim light. The room hushed, cameras swiveling. He approached Ronaldo, his hand extended, his smile tight. "Good speech," he said, his voice clipped. "Didn't expect that from a soccer guy." Ronaldo looked him in the eye, his grip firm as he shook Trump's hand. "Leaders lift others up," he said, his voice low, steady. "Not tear them down." The words hung there, sharp and true, a quiet blade cutting through the tension. Trump's smile faltered, his eyes narrowing, but he nodded, stepping back. Emma's camera caught it all, her tweet already forming. "Ronaldo just schooled Trump. This is going to break the internet." The stage was set for something bigger, the world watching, waiting for what came next. 3. The grand ballroom of the New York Convention Center still hummed with the afterglow of Cristiano Ronaldo's presentation, its chandeliers casting a warm, golden light over a crowd forever changed. The air felt lighter now, as if Ronaldo's words and the stories of Sofia, Lucas, and Maria had lifted a weight from the room. The Brazilian delegation, once stung by Donald Trump's dismissive remark about their nation's worth, now sat with shoulders squared, their faces alight with pride. Carla, the young diplomat, clutched her notepad, her eyes still wet from the emotional videos, her heart pounding with a newfound resolve. Beside her, Diego, the tech innovator, tapped furiously on his phone, drafting a proposal to amplify Ronaldo's message through his startup. In the fifth row, Emma, the journalist, scrolled through her viral tweets, her fingers trembling as hashtag Brazil Rising trended worldwide, her live coverage now a global phenomenon. Dr. Silva, the elderly professor, sat quietly, his silver hair catching the light, his notebook filled with scribbled wisdom, a faint smile signaling his faith in the moment's lasting impact. Ronaldo, back in the third row, had slipped into his navy tracksuit and cap, his presence understated but magnetic, his eyes reflecting a quiet satisfaction. The summit moved forward, but the real story was the ripple effect of his response, a spark that was about to ignite the world. Backstage, the tension from Ronaldo's handshake with Trump lingered like static in the air. Trump's words, "Didn't expect that from a soccer guy," had been met with Ronaldo's piercing reply, "Leaders lift others up, not tear them down." The exchange, captured by Emma's camera, was already exploding online, clips looping across social media with captions like, "Ronaldo schools Trump," and "Brazil's voice roars." Emma's followers surged, her phone buzzing with notifications as she typed. That handshake was more than a moment, it was a statement. The crowd had watched in silence, cameras flashing, the weight of Ronaldo's calm defiance sinking in. Trump had stepped back, his smile tight, his aides ushering him away, their faces grim as they scrambled to control the narrative. But the narrative was no longer theirs. Ronaldo had stolen it, not with anger, but with stories, with truth, with the unyielding spirit of a nation. Carla, watching from her seat, whispered to Diego, "He didn't just respond, he redefined us." Diego nodded, his eyes bright. "This is bigger than the summit, it's a movement." As the summit wound down, the Brazilian delegation gathered in a quiet corner of the ballroom, their voices low but urgent. Carla, her blazer slightly wrinkled from the day's intensity, took the lead. "We can't let this moment fade," she said, her voice steady. "Ronaldo gave us a platform. Let's build on it." Diego, his phone still in hand, grinned. "I'm in. My startup can launch a campaign. Brazil Rising, apps, scholarships, stories like Sophia's. We show the world what we're made of." Dr. Silva, joining them, nodded, his voice soft but firm. "This is our chance to rewrite the story, not just for us, but for the kids back home." The group buzzed with ideas, their earlier shame replaced by a fierce determination. Emma, overhearing, approached, her press badge glinting. "Mind if I join?" she asked, her smile sharp but genuine. "This story's too big for one tweet. I want to write a feature. Ronaldo, you, Brazil's comeback." Carla hesitated, then nodded. "Tell the truth," she said. "That's all we ask." Emma's eyes lit up, her notebook already open, the seeds of a viral article taking root. Ronaldo, meanwhile, slipped out of the ballroom, his cap low, his steps quiet. He didn't crave the spotlight, though it followed him like a shadow. In the hallway, he was stopped by Sophia's image on a looping screen, her voice echoing. "Ronaldo gave me a chance to dream bigger." He paused, his fingers brushing the screen, his face softening. A memory flashed. His childhood in Madeira, kicking a tattered ball on dusty streets, his mother's tired smile as she worked late to feed him. "Hope," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "That's what this is about." A young staffer, a Brazilian intern named Tiago, overheard, his eyes wide with awe. "Mr. Ronaldo," he stammered, "you made us proud today. My family back in Sao Paulo, they're watching online, crying." Ronaldo smiled, clapping Tiago's shoulder. "Tell them to keep dreaming, yeah? That's how we win." Tiago nodded, his face glowing, as Ronaldo moved on, his presence leaving a warmth that lingered. Outside, the city buzzed, unaware of the seismic shift inside. But online, the world was waking up. Emma's article, rushed to her outlet, hit the web with the headline, "Ronaldo's response to Trump redefines Brazil's global story." It detailed Sophia's coding, Lucas's prosthetics, Maria's gratitude, painting a Brazil of resilience and brilliance. Hashtags like hashtag Brazil Rising and hashtag Ronaldo Speaks dominated social media, with users from Tokyo to Johannesburg sharing their own stories of overcoming stereotypes. In Brazil, schools paused lessons to stream Ronaldo's speech, teachers using it to spark debates on identity and pride. In a Rio classroom, a girl raised her hand, echoing Sophia, "I want to code too." Her teacher, eyes wet, nodded. "You will." The ripple effect was unstoppable, a wave of hope washing over a nation long battered by doubt. Back at the summit, the final session ended, but the Brazilian delegation lingered, their energy electric. Carla and Diego pitched their Brazil Rising campaign to other delegates, their voices confident, their ideas bold. Dr. Silva offered to mentor Sofia, connecting her with a university in Sao Paulo for a scholarship. "She's the future," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Emma, scribbling notes, promised to follow Sofia's journey, her article already shaping global perceptions. Trump's team, meanwhile, issued a statement claiming his words were misunderstood, but it was drowned out by the roar of Ronaldo's impact. His aides avoided cameras, their faces tight, as social media mocked their damage control. A viral meme showed Ronaldo's calm face next to Trump's grimace, captioned, "When truth meets ego." Emma retweeted it, her followers cheering. Ronaldo, now at his hotel, stood by the window, the Manhattan skyline glittering below. His phone buzzed with messages, Pelé, his old coach, even the Brazilian president, but he ignored them, lost in thought. He opened his social media, typing a single post, "Brazil shines, always has." The post exploded, millions liking, sharing, commenting, "You're our voice," and "Obrigado, Cristiano." He smiled, setting the phone down, his heart full. A knock came at the door. Tiago, the intern, holding a small gift from the summit staff, a framed photo of Ronaldo on stage, Sofia's image behind him. "For you," Tiago said, his voice shy. Ronaldo took it, his eyes softening. "This is for all of us," he said, clapping Tiago's shoulder again. The moment felt small but profound, a reminder of why he'd spoken. Not for fame, but for his people. In Brazil, the impact deepened. Community centers replayed Ronaldo's speech, kids chanting his name, their dreams reignited. In Recife, Maria, the mother from the video, watched her son João coach kids, her heart swelling. "He did this," she whispered, clutching a photo of Ronaldo. In Salvador, Lucas showed his prosthetics to a local news crew, crediting Ronaldo's foundation. Sofia, back in Rio, started her tech internship, her app now downloaded by thousands. Schools adopted Ronaldo's story for lessons on resilience, teachers quoting his words, "Hope is stronger than doubt." In Brasilia, politicians, inspired by the summit, proposed a new education fund, naming it Futuro Visível, after Ronaldo's vision. The nation felt united, not by politics or wealth, but by a shared pride, a spark lit by a man in a tracksuit. Globally, the conversation shifted. Universities in London and Cape Town analyzed Ronaldo's speech in sociology classes, calling it a masterclass in symbolic resistance. NGOs launched campaigns inspired by Brazil Rising, focusing on youth empowerment. In New York, Emma's article won awards, her follow-up piece on Sofia's internship trending for weeks. Trump, uncharacteristically quiet, avoided Brazil in speeches, his team steering him to safer topics. But the damage was done. Not to Brazil, but to his narrative. Ronaldo's response had reframed a nation, turning a moment of humiliation into a global celebration of resilience. Social media kept the fire alive, with artists painting murals of Ronaldo in Sao Paulo, captioned, "The voice that roared." Back in Brazil, Ronaldo visited a community center in his hometown, Porto Alegre, the dusty field where he'd first kicked a ball, now decorated with banners. "Obrigado, Cristiano." Kids swarmed him, their eyes bright, their voices loud. A girl no older than 10 handed him a drawing of herself coding, labeled, "Like Sophia." Ronaldo knelt, his smile wide. "You're next," he said, tucking the drawing into his pocket. The crowd cheered, their love a tangible force. Later, alone, he sat on the field, the stars above bright, his thoughts on his mother, his childhood, the kids he'd inspired. He pulled out his phone, posting one last message. "Dream big, Brazil. The world's watching." The post went viral, a final note in a symphony of change. The summit was over, but its echo lived on. Carla and Diego launched Brazil Rising, their campaign funding scholarships and tech hubs. Dr. Silva mentored Sofia, her app now global. Emma's stories kept Brazil in the spotlight, her pen a bridge to the world. And Ronaldo, back on the field, training kids, remained the quiet giant who'd spoken for a nation. His legacy wasn't just goals or trophies, it was the spark he'd lit, the pride he'd restored, the truth he'd told. Brazil shone, not because it had to prove anything, but because it always had. The story of Cristiano Ronaldo's response to Donald Trump's dismissive remark at the New York summit is a powerful narrative that resonates deeply, stirring a whirlwind of emotions and offering profound lessons for everyday life. As I immersed myself in the vivid scenes, the glittering ballroom, Trump's stinging words, Ronaldo's quiet resolve, and the transformative stories of Sofia, Lucas, and Maria, I felt a roller coaster of frustration, awe, and inspiration. Set against the backdrop of a high-stakes global stage, the story captures American cultural values of resilience, redemption, and the underdog spirit. It's not just about a soccer star silencing a critic. It's a mirror reflecting our own biases, our capacity for change, and the impact of standing up with dignity. This narrative challenges us to rethink how we judge others, respond to adversity, and inspire those around us, offering practical takeaways that can shape our personal and professional lives. Reading about Trump's remark, "Brazilians are great at soccer and parties, but they've got nothing to offer in leadership or business," I felt a surge of frustration. The words were a cheap shot, reducing a vibrant nation to a stereotype. In American culture, where diversity is celebrated yet stereotypes persist, this moment hit close to home. It reminded me of times I've overheard dismissive comments about someone's background, co-workers judged for their accents, neighbors sidelined for their roots. Trump's arrogance, delivered with a smirk, echoed the kind of prejudice that thrives on ignorance. I cringed imagining Carla, Diego, and the Brazilian delegation, their pride wounded in front of a global elite. The scene tapped into a universal feeling, the sting of being underestimated, of having your worth questioned because of where you're from. It made me reflect on moments I've stayed silent when someone was unfairly judged, vowing to speak up next time. But Ronaldo's response shifted my frustration to awe. His calm, deliberate silence in the face of Trump's jab was a masterclass in restraint. In a culture that often rewards loud arguments or viral clapbacks, Ronaldo's choice to respond with action, not anger, felt revolutionary. His decision to scrap his planned presentation for raw, emotional stories, Sofia's coding, Lucas's prosthetics, Maria's gratitude, was a stroke of genius. Each video was a counterpunch, not to Trump's ego but to the world's misconceptions. I was moved by Sofia's quiet strength, her voice trembling yet proud, and by Maria's tears, a mother's heart laid bare. These stories weren't just Brazilian, they were human, universal, echoing the American dream of rising against odds. Ronaldo's ability to amplify others' voices, not his own, reminded me of great leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., who used stories to shift hearts, not just headlines. I found myself admiring Ronaldo's emotional intelligence, his understanding that truth, told simply, can be louder than any shout. The supporting characters enriched the emotional tapestry, making the story feel like a microcosm of society. Carla's fierce pride and Diego's quiet resolve mirrored the grit of young professionals I know, striving to prove their worth. Emma, the journalist, brought a modern American edge, her live tweeting a nod to our culture's obsession with real-time storytelling. Her viral posts, amplifying Ronaldo's moment, showed the power of media to shape narratives, a reminder of how a single tweet can spark change. Dr. Silva, the elderly professor, was my favorite, his quiet wisdom a beacon in a noisy world. His scribbled notes, his murmured advice to wait for the light, felt like the voice of a mentor we all crave. These characters grounded the story, making it relatable, as if I could see myself in their shoes, angry, hopeful, inspired. They reminded me that transformation isn't just personal, it's collective, a shared journey of lifting each other up. Ronaldo's climactic handshake with Trump, paired with his pointed words, "Leaders lift others up, not tear them down," was a moment of catharsis. I cheered inwardly, not for a takedown, but for a truth spoken with dignity. In American culture, where confrontation often overshadows dialogue, Ronaldo's approach was a revelation. He didn't stoop to Trump's level. He rose above it, forcing Trump to confront his own words. The image of Trump's tight smile, his discomfort palpable, was satisfying, but also sobering. It showed that even the powerful can be humbled, not by force, but by authenticity. This moment resonated with my own experiences. Times I've wanted to lash out at a critic but held back, choosing instead to prove them wrong with results. Ronaldo's restraint taught me that true strength lies in staying true to your values, even when provoked. The story's ripple effect, Brazil rising, Sofia's internship, global campaigns, left me inspired, my heart swelling with hope. It showed that one moment, done right, can spark a movement. In America, where grassroots efforts often drive change, this felt like a call to action. Ronaldo's visit to Porto Alegre, surrounded by kids chanting his name, was the emotional peak. The girl's drawing, labeled like Sofia, brought tears to my eyes, a symbol of dreams passed forward. It reminded me of community centers in my city where kids look to role models for hope. Ronaldo's legacy wasn't just his speech, it was the spark he lit in others, a chain reaction of belief. This inspired me to think about my own impact, how a kind word, a mentorship, or a small act can ripple outward, changing lives I'll never meet. The lessons from this story are practical, ready to be applied in daily life. First, it teaches us to challenge stereotypes with empathy, not anger. Instead of arguing with someone who judges based on appearance or origin, we can share stories, like Ronaldo did, that humanize and uplift. In my workplace, this means listening to a colleague's background before assuming their capabilities, or sharing my own story to build bridges. Second, it shows the power of restraint in conflict. Ronaldo's silence, his choice to fight fire with water, as he might say, is a model for handling critics. Next time I face a harsh comment, online or in person, I'll pause, respond with facts or kindness, and let my actions speak. Third, it emphasizes amplifying others' voices. Ronaldo didn't make the moment about himself. He gave Sofia, Lucas, and Maria the stage. I can do this by mentoring a younger co-worker, promoting a friend's project, or celebrating someone's success publicly. Finally, the story underscores the importance of hope as a catalyst. Ronaldo's belief in Brazil's potential inspired a nation. In my life, this means fostering optimism in tough times, encouraging a struggling friend, supporting a community initiative, or simply believing in better days. Applying these lessons feels urgent in today's America, where division often drowns out unity. Stereotypes about race, class, or culture persist in workplaces, schools, and social media. Ronaldo's example challenges us to see people's stories, not their labels. I've started practicing this, asking my barista about her day, learning my neighbor's journey from another country, catching myself when I judge a stranger's appearance. The story also inspires action in moments of adversity. Instead of snapping at a rude comment, I'm trying to respond with calm, like Ronaldo, using truth to shift the narrative. In my community, I'm volunteering at a youth program inspired by Ronaldo's foundation to give kids tools to dream big. These small steps, rooted in the story's lessons, feel like a way to honor its message, turning inspiration into impact. Ultimately, Ronaldo's voice of pride is a call to be better, to judge less, lift more, and act with purpose. It's about recognizing the power of one moment to change minds, hearts, and histories. Ronaldo didn't set out to be a hero. He simply stood for what was right, and the world listened. That's a reminder we all carry that spark, whether in a boardroom, a classroom, or a quiet conversation. By choosing empathy, restraint, and hope, we can rewrite narratives, just as Ronaldo did. This story isn't just Brazil's, it's ours, a blueprint for living with dignity in a world quick to judge. If this story lit a fire in you, don't let it fade. Smash that like button to show your support, share it with friends who need a dose of inspiration, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that hit deep. Drop a comment below. What would you have said to Trump, or how has someone's story changed your view? Your voice matters, so let's hear it. Stay tuned for more and keep shining.